first start with the presentation, I was asked by Tatiana to introduce the regulatory sandbox canvas that we develop as a tool to facilitate the conversation about these issues. You already see this is a very multi-dimensional conversation. It's emerging, so it's not so easy always to put it in a very, very clear shape. And then we'll have exercise for you. You already have artifacts linked to this exercise. We designed something that hopefully is more fun. So a bit of a role play without working on the nitty-gritty canvas. So this doesn't work. No. So this already, I don't need to say it. You will have the slides distributed. It's a journey, how we arrived at this preparatory action. The reminder that experimentation is one of the tasks that we do. An important note that what makes us different from a lot of projects, European projects that work on experimentation, is, as I said before, that we, JRC, but also our colleagues from other DGs, are part of this journey, right? So we are not a client. We are part of the conversation from the beginning to the end. We are co-creating it genuinely. And I think Tatiana, Anna, Joshkun, other colleagues can confirm. We didn't come to the table with the ready-made idea to just validate it. We are co-developing it with them. And by the way, we are really grateful that we can also co-develop it with you. Because the canvas that I will introduce in a while, this is work in progress. This is really being made. So if something is unclear, if something seems overly complicated, we really appreciate this feedback. So please think about this as a kind of a two-pronged exercise. It's working on the canvas itself, but also we would like to pick your brain on actually developing this tool. So if you have any remarks on the tool and so on, this will be appreciated by us, but also by the colleagues from Catalonia, Azores, Achiller, Ankara, and Malta. So regulatory experimentation is nothing new. There are different forms of it. And I guess you're familiar with test beds. You've heard about pilot projects, sandboxes. There are many other forms. They have legal definitions, and we soon will have to face lawyers. But for now, we want to talk about concept and then make it a little bit more precise. The gist of it, I mean, what is really important is that we think about sandboxes not as a one of instruments separated from the ecosystem. I mentioned it already, but I think it's important to add to it. It has to be embedded in the existing ecosystem. It's not something added without consideration how it connects with existing living labs, existing experimental initiatives, and so on. So that's very important to add. And they are, I mean, as we think about this, they can serve at least three functions. One, very straightforward, very easy to explain. They improve implementation of existing regulation. So, for example, our colleagues from Azores, we tried to pitch it as something that could be introduced in the framework of the common agricultural policy. So we probably didn't manage now, but the feedback we've got from DG Agri, but also from politicians, that indeed it kind of works. It's a good idea. Why not experiment a little bit with how payments are given, in different places, considering different capacities, different situations. So it's an example of how sandbox can be used to simplify, very much in line with current debate. Second, we can anticipate new regulatory needs. And I'm pretty sure that this resonates very strongly with those of you working in living labs and so on. Because you already say like, oh, maybe there is no direct barrier, but we see the current legislative framework does not provide incentives to encourage solutions for which we have evidence deliver more value, for example, than economic. It brings social value and so on. This is not recognized. Maybe we should experiment with frameworks that incentivize these other values. So that's second. And finally, indeed, it could someday in the future be a ground to co-create, think about new legislative proposals. this is a far future from now. I mean, just a reminder on what were the kind of key features we consider for this regulatory learning spaces. They are challenge-oriented, so you've heard it also in the panel. It's about starting from a problem. It's not piling up on existing regulation. We rethink, we stress test what we have based on the problems, for which we have evidence. So there is evidence of a problem, emerging, urgent, in the future. The current regulatory framework doesn't respond to it because it doesn't, the classic example, it's too slow to recognize technological progress. It didn't take into account certain issues on the interface between them. So challenge-oriented approach helps us. It's a strongest driver for a kind of coherent approach to policy making I can think of in the situation of addressing complex challenge. It's not that we need to redefine everything. We'll never have a perfect system for everything. But if we focus on key problems, at least we have to make sure that within existing structure, we are doing everything we can to address it, and we can rethink how to do it better. Then, this is a little bit of a conversation going. To what extent sandbox can be also a zone? And why is it important? Typically, sandboxes are arrangements between regulator and one company. So essentially, sandbox, what is it? Is a town-bound derogation from existing regulation with safeguards, monitoring arrangements, where a company signs a contract with regulator, and regulator says, okay, you can do something different. You have 5 years. This is what we want to see as an evidence, and then we take a decision. And in many cases, especially food system place-based approaches, this sort of arrangements are not sufficient because the infrastructures may co-owned. We may want to include more than one player, like for example, many small farmers or cooperative or a value chain. So something doesn't work there. So we need arrangements that allow for like a many-to-many arrangements because on the other end, one regulator it cannot address all the issues that may be relevant for a problem, right? So the proposal is, why don't we have places that actually, on which we can zoom because they exemplify a problem. And then we don't start with question who, but we start with question who is relevant to address the problem, right? So that's the one. And by the way, this is not unheard of. It's already happening. So multi-actor approach. Everything, I mean, I must say I was very, very happy during the discussion to hear that what we are coming up as a kind of concept thing was coming up very strongly in the conversations we've had. That this approaches, even though that there is a very strong understanding that place-based doesn't mean just local. Place-based means we focus on territorial articulation of a problem, but there are many actors and many levels and facets of this program which are not necessarily residing in locality. So, multi-level governance approach necessary because otherwise we will never sort out the issues. Horizontal integration, that's more common sense for people who are aware of mission-oriented approaches and so on. We shouldn't reside in one sector. We need to think cross-sectorally. You know it very well. And of course, super important thing, this is not a one-off local exercise from our point of view. This has to serve, this has to bring learnings and case for scaling up these changes. Well, for the European level, you need a very strong case. You can imagine, we may be very concerned with Villa de Camp's problems, but nobody will change European regulation just because of this. But as we saw in the conversation, the problems faced by Villa de Camps are not unique problems. Some of them are, but there are dozens of places that face similar issues. Maybe this is a case to rethink, and this is absolutely key, and it's a big gap at the moment. There are not many established methodologies to monitor, to design research attached to sandboxes based on which we can have a case. Look, we know if we scale it, this will have this and this effects. Bigger challenge. in some cases, we will not have this very straightforward result. We cannot run it through a model. We cannot shock a CGO model and say, if you do this, GDP will grow by 0.5%. This is nonsense. So it implies much bigger shift in the policymaker minds that there needs to be openness for other type of evidence that may support scaling. Right, so we drew some pictures, which I'm not sure if they're making the case easier, but the idea is that to illustrate indeed that we can think about, we need to think, even though if we focus on a place or space, we need collaboration between different levels of governance, we need different actors and so on. We'll redraw it, needs to be nicer. And now, these things are happening. I must say, to my surprise, there is very little happening in food system, which I thought would be actually very interesting and apt area to this sort of experimentation. There's not much. There's this very well, if you do search very quickly, something in Singapore will pop up. There's something very new in Spain as well, but nothing the way we think about this. But in the area of energy, for example, it's happening. Probably some of you work on energy communities, and the sort of approaches. So there is inspiration to be taken. Recently also kind of discovered this Danish initiative, which seems very interesting, I must say. We just found it, right? So it's not that I'm promoting it. It's just that there are some inspirations out there. And the important thing to say, within the food experimentation journey, you know the colleagues. I mean, maybe the colleagues who are from PA, if you could raise your hands so you see who they are. So you see, it's important. In parallel, there is also experimentation journey focused on decarbonization. It's led by Ostrobotnia in Finland, and they are working on the very similar approach. So they're also testing this canvas, but based on the energy area. So we are making this case stronger, hopefully. Right, and now, canvas. Why are we doing canvas? We're doing a canvas because it's a tool. So you know that, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, probably most of you would know this business generation canvas, no? That came up like, whatever, 10 plus years ago. And I must say, it's probably one of the coolest PhD theses I came across, because it was a PhD thesis of Osterwalder, so that's quite brilliant. And it was just great. It was great, right? I mean, it really worked, and it was adopted probably 1,000 times later because it just worked. So it was a reminder that these tools, and in general design thinking, if it's connected with other methods, can be extremely useful, right? So why? It provides a boundaries, like at a glance, we know what we are talking about. It embeds conceptual framework that we can keep on working on. Huh? So it's a place to co-develop. It's not something firm. Because it's a collaborative working space, and it doesn't seem terribly serious, right? So it's important at this stage. Then it's modular, so it doesn't mean that, for example, today or tomorrow we'll expect you to do every single box to a detail. It's just impossible. It takes time to think about this, but it's important to have the whole picture, even if we address maybe one or two issues first. And now what we will do within preparatory action, we will present it, probably, as one of the outputs of this collaborative work. So at some point when we'll go back to the European Parliament next year, we will, but we will ask our territories to speak to it and explain, look, this actually responds to my problem. So locally it can be applicable, and we can say, and we see the case to generalize from it, and it could be a useful tool. Right, so this is the way we designed it. Now, I don't know, Shai, if we added the slide or we need the flash mob. There is a slide, wonderful. So that will be a proof that it's really a living thing, right? So this was the first version, the very, very beta version. So don't take pictures of that. This is not pretty. I mean, it's much prettier version. So we started with value proposition, and I liked it that in our conversations it already was strong, right? I mean, why on earth are we doing that? What sort of value are we providing to whom? And there is no one model. There may be made because we are place-based and we try to respond to different challenges. So that we start from that. And then we think about functions, what the sandbox actually does, who is involved, what are the resources needed, what are actually this called regulatory experimentation process, and importantly, how is it embedded in the policy process wider. So very quickly, because then Carla will kill me, or we start with the value proposition, right? So this is to explain what sort of problems are being addressed, who is benefited, and so on. So it can be, the value propositions can be for different groups, and this will explain partly the exercise. And then what we do within the experimentation journey, we didn't jump right off to the canvas. First, we had a big exercise on theory of change that Carla and colleagues led. Functions, you will recognize it, because some of them are similar to test beds and living labs, but so it's a real-life testing environment. It's not a lab, it's real life, they're real clients. This is the big difference. Sandbox is the TRL 89. This is when you sell to real clients. This is not testing anymore. This is the biggest difference between living labs and test beds and sandboxes. You are on the market. Big difference. Because otherwise, what's the point of changing regulation, right? I mean, unless it's about research, but okay, let's not complicate it. So okay, then the derogation of certain regulations can be suspended temporarily. No, it's not about deregulation. It's about improving regulatory framework. Safeguards, right? We want to avoid free riders. Let's not be naive. There will be companies like, aha, okay. No, the safeguards have to be there. Monitoring learning I mentioned before, and importantly, this is a learning space. Actors, diverse actors, so not just companies. There may be different actors involved who are participating in the testing, because it depends on what is being tested. So I mentioned, no, I didn't, it was in a smaller group, that the current, for example, definition that is emerging for the European Innovation Act does not include only technologies, but also business models. So business models can be also tested as a part of the sandbox, which changes the picture completely. Reflection on what sort of capabilities we need. This is not easy. Someone has to do it. Probably we cannot do it with half of FTE. It's not a trivial question. The processes. So this classic approach, there is bottom up and top down. Bottom up means that company comes, hey, I have a problem. Essentially, top down is regulator thinks, maybe I'll do something different. Could you test it? The learning, so the methodologies are needed to gather relevant data, feedback, and so on. And then the critical question about, can it be scaled up or not? And now, important thing, if some things cannot be scaled up, it doesn't mean the sandbox failed. On the contrary, it means it worked. And finally, what I said, there is a governance around it. It's not a standalone thing. It needs to be linked with other initiatives and other instruments. Because what, for example, is omitted in the current definition, I think is taken for granted. This is not just about innovation in companies. This is very much about innovation in public sector as well. And this is the version 2. So you see prettier. And tomorrow, so this is what you'll face tomorrow on your tables, I think, no? And having said this, I'll give the floor to Carla. Carla designed an exercise which is more fun and hopefully light touch to entertain us before the walk. I think it's...
Thank you. This one. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Michal. So yeah, my job is to make something fun. So first I'm gonna ask you to stand up, and we're gonna check how much you heard about this presentation. So we're gonna do a scale. So I want you to move here if you think you know a lot about regulatory sandboxes, and move to the other side of the room if you think you know nothing. And you can sit in the middle if you think you're in between. So if you know a lot, you're here. If you know nothing, you're on the other side of the room.
I mean, come on. Well, I mean, I'm joining everyone. Let's be in the middle. Okay, come here, come here.
Okay. I see we're in an uncertain territory. That's good. So we're all going to explore. Now I have a different question. Same. I want you to move according to how much do you think regulatory sandboxes are really a key tool for experimentation. So if you think they're really, really the big thing, you're here. If you think they're hype like AI, you're on the other side.
Leading questions.
If you're cool.
It's okay. It's okay. Catalonia is with us. Let's go.
Okay. I see some healthy skepticism here, so that's great. So thank you for the honesty. Now I want you to go back to your tables, and we'll start with this role-playing exercise. Thank you for playing with this icebreaker.